welcome to the Venue Success Podcast. I'm your host, Tirzah, and I just want to say a huge thank you to all of those of you that are listening, that are watching. Today is the last episode of my short little series of tips from Tirzah, and I hope that it's been helpful to you. I am always just, again, so humbled, the people that reach out, that are just so appreciative for the lessons learned in this humble little converted playroom that I'm in here. This is not fancy. Listen, my dog just jumped up over here on the couch for those of you that are watching. I'm just, super stoked. Next season, before I get into today's topic, next season is going to be another venue owner series. So I've already been interviewing tons of venue owners all across the country. And it occurred to me a couple nights ago, I have a fair amount of insomnia. And I was laying in bed and I was like, what would be super cool is if I interviewed a venue owner in every state. I think that'd be super cool. So if you're listening from maybe one of the less common states, what would that be? Please reach out to me because I would love to have you on the podcast. So I still have a few spots left. But so next season is going to be the venue owner season. And then the season after that, I think that we're going to circle back around to our venue pro series because I have a lot of people that have been beating down my door wanting to be on the podcast to share about a product or service that they have. And part of my passion is to just let you hear from the people out there that are doing great things in the industry. When I first started, I really wanted it to be people that I had personally vetted, worked with. But now I'm kind of getting to the point where, especially now that I don't own a venue, that's a little bit more tricky for me. But I do try to vet people as much as possible to make sure that they're legitimate and all that fun stuff. So so be sure to stay tuned for that. That's coming out in a couple weeks. And this summer, we're actually going to be celebrating 2 years. Crazy. 2 years of the Venue Success Podcast. It's absolutely wild to me. We have not missed a single episode. So in the very beginning, I was like, I got to set the bar, I don't want to say low. I just wanted to set it at a manageable pace. And so we were like, we'll do an episode every other week. And that's kind of been a good rhythm for me. So I think that we will definitely stay with that. But okay, without further ado, I have my teacup for those of you that are just listening. Today is tea with tea. And I say tea in terms, there's not going to be a lot of drama that I'm sharing with you today, but I do want to share with you some of my heart. So today is going to be definitely, we'll see how it goes. In typical Tirzah fashion, this is just going to be straight from my heart to your ears. So take it or leave it. But at the time of this recording, it has been 1 year exactly since we sold our business. And it has been 1 year and 1 day since we sold our property, which was never really part of the plan originally. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about that journey. So this is not, first of all, going to be a podcast where I am bashing on people or trying to hurt other businesses. That is not the intention at all. What I do think that is important is that there is a big influx of people that are selling their businesses, their venues right now. And there's obviously a huge influx of people getting into this industry, right? We are, many of us, not strangers to the lovely market saturation issue that we have. But I just wanted to share with you about our journey because something that I've noticed is that it's like these people, they sell their venues and they kind of disappear from our lives, and we never really get to know like what was that process like for them? Why did they choose to sell? What who are the people that these venues had in their back pocket helping them throughout that process? Because it's definitely it's not easy process for sure, and you need to have people in your corner helping you. So I just wanted to just kind of let you guys peek behind the curtain of my life just a little bit. And so the tip from Tirzah for today is really just letting you know the heartfelt journey behind this process of the last several years, and tell you a little bit about our story too. So, if you are trying to listen to the podcast and get some nitty gritty, like great business coaching advice, this is probably not the one for you. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, you can get to know me a little bit today. That's totally fine. But if you're looking for some quick wins and some actionable things, this might not be the episode for you. I'm just being honest. So 1 year ago, it was April 1st, 2025, that we closed on our business. So when I say that, what I'm saying is we sold our business and we remained owners of our property and basically became landlords. That was not something that I was super accustomed to, that being a model for people when they sold their businesses. And it was actually something that was very appealing to me. But let me just pause and I will get into that. But I want to give you a little bit of history about what kind of led us to this place. Many of you know that have been listening to me for a while know that I grew up in a venue. So we purchased the venue when I was 13 years old. It was a condemned 1858 home in St. Louis, Missouri. My parents and my sisters and brothers renovated this place. My sister got engaged over the course of the renovation. And my sister was like, what if we had the wedding here? And so that was in 1994. The house was not done yet by any means. We got a few rooms renovated in the house. We had a big tent in the front yard, and that was kind of the beginning of our family doing weddings. However, my mom had been always very passionate about weddings because she had been in the wedding industry with her grandmother, who was a wedding florist. So when you hear me talk about like us being in the wedding industry for over 100 years, that's kind of how it all began. My mom ran away from home when she was in high school, moved in with her grandmother, learned all about weddings, and that's when she kind of grew in her love for the industry, but also specifically flowers. So my mom's owned several venues, but also some flower shops as well, and really loves that side of the wedding industry. So that's kind of where it all came about. And, growing up in a wedding venue wasn't necessarily, I've said this before in the podcast, like there's a lot that I learned, and I'm grateful for. We were homeschooled, and so I had a lot of unique opportunities, and I think that those things really made me who I am today. But there was a lot about it that I also feel like I kind of miss my childhood, We were a very hardworking family. I learned incredible work ethic from a very young age, but I wasn't doing a lot of maybe the typical kid things. And so one of the things that was always really important to me is that when I became a mom and had the opportunity to make some of those decisions for my family, that I wanted to do it differently. When I started working at the venue that I just sold, it was in 2008 when my mom bought this property, and we were kind of hoping that in 2008 that was going to be kind of like the end of an era with our family being in the space. And so my mom, she remarried in, I don't know, early 2000s. No, 2006, I guess it was. And her new husband really wanted to experience doing a renovation with her, because all of our venues up to this point were historic restorations, I should say, not renovations. They were restorations. And so he wanted to experience that with her. And I will never forget the day that they told me that they bought this property. And I was like, you were supposed to retire, because I knew inevitably, because we've always, my mom and I, built, a lot of the wedding industry stuff together. I was like, oh no, I'm going to be involved in this one. I just knew it from the very beginning. And so I was definitely. They restored the home, and this was the venue in Charlotte, North Carolina. They restored it. And I had 2 little kids at this point. We were living in Green Bay, and I started doing all of the phones and kind of the behind the scenes thing. And then we moved. My husband was a pastor at the time in Green Bay. Then we moved to Florida. He was a lead pastor. And by that point, I was like basically running the whole sales and marketing department from Florida. And I was commuting from Florida to Charlotte for 5 freaking years. I would just travel up there. I managed everything. I managed the all of the tours. I would do it was insane how much I did. I would print off contracts from my office in Orlando, and it would print out, gotta love technology, in Charlotte, and my tour guide would take the contract and go do the tour, and then I would close the deals. And I sold the first 50 weddings at that venue with just a blueprint of the barn that we were building. And so I was very heavily involved with that venue from the very, very beginning, even though my mom was the owner. So when my husband kind of burned out from his career in ministry, all of our jobs in the ministry were actually kind of like less than ideal situations, and that's putting it really lightly. But after 13 years, my husband and this is, he would share the same thing if he was sitting next to me, really started to deal with some significant anxiety and depression. And some close mentors in our life just spoke some loving words over him, but basically said, hey, you're burnout, and I think it's okay to let this career go, and for the good of your family, for the good of your marriage. And so because I was already, providing a lot for us with my job, we decided to move from Orlando up to Charlotte. And we did that in 2016 is when we moved to Charlotte. Again, I'd been working with the business from the very, very beginning when they purchased it. But when I came here to Charlotte, we were already in a bit of a vulnerable place as a family, a vulnerable place in our marriage. It was a very stressful time for us. And so, I told Bradley, that he needed to take some time to heal and to, get in some counseling and, get in a healthier place. And so I continued to lead the venue. And then it came a point where it just wasn't the healthiest thing for me personally to remain in that job, in that environment. I just was not driving with the way things are being run, and it was a lot more apparent to me when I was there in person. And so I decided to go get a corporate job, and I interviewed actually for 5 months. I put the stilettos on, got the suit, interviewed at Coca-Cola Consolidated actually here in Charlotte, and got to the very end of the process with them. And throughout that journey, my mom and stepdad came to me and they were like, hey, like we don't want to do this without you. Would you be interested in purchasing? And I had known what they wanted to sell it to some other family members for, and I didn't agree with the price. And so I said, here's what we'll do. Pretty sure I already have a job over here. So, but I'm going to take a week and pray about it. You take a week and pray about it. Come up with a number. If we come back with the same exact number, I will consider buying it. So we did that. And I mean, I guess it's pretty obvious what happened, but they came back and they had thought of the same number that Bradley and I had thought of. And I just have to pause to say, we did not have a lot of resources at this point. Bradley was a pastor. That's what we had thought that we were going to spend our entire life being in the ministry. And so, it wasn't really ever part of the plan for us to own a venue. It wasn't actually part of my desires either because of growing up in a venue. I'd kind of had my fill, to be honest. And it just, but the opportunity was there, and we kind of put out this fleece, and we're like, if it's meant to be, we'll just keep putting one foot in front of the other. So we came up with an agreement on what we would buy it for. We didn't have any money, so we had to figure out how to even get a down payment on this property. And unfortunately, there was not going to be any deposits coming with our purchase, and so we had to figure out how we were going to pay for all the weddings that were going to be on the books. That's a whole nother conversation, not for here. But it was a very, very stressful time. But we ended up, so we purchased it back in 2016, and I tell you all of that because, when we got into this, as a couple, my husband has, he'd been coming and doing weddings with me since I was a teenager, right? Like we started dating when we were 18 and 19. He's been in and around the wedding industry for a very long time as well, but it's never been a passion point for him. And again, he and I will publicly and often talk about this. It's not a secret, but the wedding industry has been kind of my thing. It's been my passion, and it hasn't really been his, but it was a great place for him to be employed when he was in a season of life that was very difficult for him. And it allowed me to kind of step into my strengths and grow that business beyond what I even thought was possible. And, but all of that to say, it wasn't ever really the plan to own it forever. And because I knew that this is not a business that my kids were going to want to take on, I knew that there was going to need to be an exit at some point. I didn't know exactly when it was going to be. But in 2023, we were, was it, no, it was 2024, the summer of 2024, I was speaking at a conference in Austin. And Bradley and I were sitting, I'll never forget, we were sitting in the lobby and we were just chit-chatting about like, what's the next 5 years look like for us, and what would you like to do? I was saying to my husband, like, what are you excited about? And, just kind of dreaming of different things. And while we were there, two big things happened. One, we got an email from a company that was just random, and it went to Bradley, which was very strange that it went to him, not me. I learned later that it was a mass mailing and it wasn't anything personal, actually. But someone had sent us an email saying, hey, we see that your venue is highly desired. It's got great reviews. Would you be interested in having a conversation about us potentially buying your business? And we were like, that's so interesting, as we're talking about our 5-year plan, that we get this email the same exact day. Also, what happened that day is I met someone who has since become my personal wealth manager. I met her in line. She and I, two chicks getting old fashioned. We were standing there. We both got the same drinks and we were like, cheers. And she was also a speaker at the conference. And we ended up sitting and chatting for over probably 2 hours. And she had said to me, have you ever considered selling your business and keeping your property as an asset and kind of working it out that way? Well, so wild that she says that, and just that day we get an email from someone mentioning that very thing to us, and I had never really considered that at all. Well, I guess it's obvious. We went down that path with this company. They came out. That whole process was not really great, to be honest. They came out. We had to keep it very secret that they were coming because we didn't want to obviously alarm our staff. And so they came a couple different visits where they came out, and we just had to tread carefully around that. The first guy that came out, he was doing his typical sales thing, and he was, you know, trying to point out every bad thing that he could about my venue. He's pretty insulting, actually, and I called him out on it. I wasn't fond of it. um, but we entered into negotiations with them, um, and so we came to the point where we did a business valuation. That was something that we had already been kind of working on a little bit, and kind of came to the point where we understood what our business was worth. And I have to pause and just say, when you're thinking about selling your venue, sometimes it's like you have an opportunity to sell, but you don't want to. And then sometimes you want to sell, but don't have an opportunity, like, an interested party. And so for me, I've been around in business enough to know that when you have an intersection of desire and opportunity, you have to really consider it. And I had to consider it based upon just like where I knew that I had grown my business to be. And one of the reasons why I even started engaging with this company is because, I had put feelers out there over the course of several years with florists or caterers or people that were like personal friends of mine in the industry. And what I knew, and I knew what other people were buying venues for, I kind of had grown our business to the point where it was like beyond the reach of a normal everyday, hey, I want to chase my dream and like open a venue. I've got $3 million, max to do that. We were out of reach for most everyday people. And so I knew that that was going to be a problem, kind of long term with selling it. And because it's also a really, really valuable piece of 6 acres in the middle of Charlotte, which is one of the top fastest growing cities in the nation right now, right? So let's have a little sip of tea here. Oh my goodness, you guys, what a story. So we have this intersection, and kind of another big piece of it was that our business was really kind of in a really wonderful spot. We were consistently having well over 100 weddings a year. We kind of scaled it to the fact that I had grown it to 130 weddings a year. We'd done that a couple of times. I did not like that at all. And I was like, let's increase our prices and do less weddings. So we did that. And I was really kind of at a personal place where I was like, well, every business has opportunities for growth. I'm not going to say that it doesn't. I'm not going to say that we hit a ceiling, because we didn't. But I personally felt like I had scaled that mountain. And you could say it's my ADHD or just my entrepreneurial spirit, whatever it is. But like, I am that kind of person that, like, when I scale a mountain, I'm looking at the next mountain, the next mountain, the next mountain. And I think that I had gotten to that point a little bit with our venue because, we had 8 full-time staff, 35 part-time staff. It was, when I tell you, it was a well-oiled machine. It's not even saying it clearly enough. It was about as perfect as can be. And I say that actually with some pride. Like, we did a really great job. Our staffing, like the people that we had on our team, were just, things were working so very well. And so for me, I just had kept thinking, like, what is the next evolution in my life? Like, what is the next challenge? Because it is tricky to be the general manager of a venue, be the owner, and scale like really big other mountains. And I had been doing some other things, but I kind of was like, I would like the freedom to not be in the everyday of this business. And kind of on the flip side of that, from my husband's perspective, he had been kind of over it for a long time. And still on a personal journey of his own, being in our upper 40s, and any of you listening to this that have been in that season of life, or you are in that season of life, there's a lot that happens. This whole midlife crisis thing, it's real, people. It is real. And I think, it was hard for him because like, he's like, this is not this life of, running a venue isn't, I don't want to say it's not what he signed up for, but it wasn't definitely what he was passionate about. And so we had to make a decision, like, is he gonna just leave the venue and go do his own thing, find his passion? I don't know. And what would that mean for me since we ran the business together? Could we replace him? Obviously yes, but we had to really take that deep personal investigation to figure out if it would even be good for us to kind of go our separate ways, him do his thing, I keep running the venue. I don't know. But for us, you could judge it all you want, but people have to make a decision that is right for their situation, their family unit, their, I think for me and Bradley and our relationship, that us doing that wasn't an option. And so we really felt deeply that God was calling us into a season of being extremely intentional to rebuild some big parts of our marriage. And again, maybe for some of you, this is like TMI, Tirzah, but I think this is really important. I met someone recently at a conference who lost her marriage because of the strain and stress that venue kind of put on their relationship. I'm not going to say that they lost it because of the venue. Obviously, there's other things going on. But running a venue together as a couple, there's a lot of great, wonderful things about it. And there's a lot of hardships as well. And so anyway, I think I'll just leave that there. But it was the calling that we felt that, the opportunity and desire intersected at a time of our life when we knew that something significant needed to change. I hope that's enough information for you without getting into too many nitty-gritty details that you guys don't need to know. But I feel like when we started interacting with this company, I was not prepared for how hard it would feel interacting with a corporation that was going to buy and not an individual that was like super excited and passionate about this being like their baby, right? Like selling to corporate was really, really not ideal in a lot of ways. And I think mostly because the lack of culture was really, really important to me. And I built something very special. The people that have worked for me, I think they would all say this to you if they were sitting right here, that working on my team was something that they had never had and will probably never have again. The culture that we created was beautiful. It was really beautiful. And so when I started interacting with this company that was going to be buying the business, it was the number one, very first thing that I said to them was, how will you take care of my team? Will you keep my team employed? And they were very adamant that they would do that they didn't want to change anything for 6 months, that they wanted to watch and learn and see how I did things. And they knew my reputation, but at the same time, I don't know that they really knew what it was that I do, but that was something that was really important to me. And I think that, so we sold, they negotiated with all of my team. Again, I'm not going to get into the weeds of all of that, but I will tell you that it was not a healthy, positive environment for most all of them. I think that there's maybe only two out of over 40 people that worked for me that some were just unhappy and knew that it wasn't a healthy place for them to remain. And so they kind of walked away. But I guess what I would say is like, when you sell to a corporation, there's not going to be the buy in like when you sell to an individual. There's not going to be that love. When I see a venue owner talk about like the blood, sweat, and tears that they put into building their businesses, and like every stone has a story, and just like the level of just deep care that we have for our properties, for our teams, for all of it. It's so special. But when you have a corporation that comes in and this is just a job for people, it's really hard. And I think that if I'm going to share anything with you, it's this, is that, we buy businesses for, particular reasons. We sell them for particular reasons. I think if you bought a venue for the purpose of it being a financial investment and you just wanted to build it to a point where you had, a really great return and then you're going to sell it and it was always meant to be that, it's different than when you build something with your hands. You physically are the one building stone by stone. When you hand it over to someone, it's like handing a baby over to them, and they're they're not careful, and that part was really hard. And seeing I've had multiple people say this to me, and I believe it to be true. They're like, the soul is gone. Like after Tirzah left, after your team left, the soul was gone. And it's just different. Now it's still a beautiful place. They're still doing weddings there and they're doing their thing. But the heart, y'all, when you stay connected with someone where we sold our business, but we're still landlords and we're working with people that, they let my facilities guy go. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I had two facility people there and now there's none. Like, again, why aren't you caring? Why aren't you caring for this thing that needs a lot of care? It was kind of that exacerbated me being open to completely selling the real estate and not having a partnership with this company anymore. Because I had a lot of concerns about what that would feel like, the liability behind having a property that I felt personally needed to be cared for differently. I'll just leave it at that. And so that's when, we started kind of dialoguing, I don't know, 5 months-ish ago about just kind of selling the real estate and kind of not having that partnership anymore. And so that's what just happened this week. We are no longer landlords, and we have kind of gone our separate ways. And what's next for us? So I obviously am still consulting. I've been doing that for close to 10 years, but the last 2.5-ish years I've been doing it very heavily. So I will keep doing that. We started Marriage Bound. A lot of you guys have been super excited about sharing that with your couples, which is the online premarital course. Listen, Bradley and I don't have a perfect marriage by any means, but we've been married for almost 26 years. So we have learned some things. And I think because of what we've gone through, it made us very passionate to help young couples maybe not make some of the mistakes that we did in the beginning. And so, again, like Marriage Bound is something that's very near and dear to our hearts, not because we're perfect, but because we care and want to see couples have successful, long lasting marriages. And so I'll keep up with this little podcast we got going on. We bought 2 more properties. So we have a short term and a long term rental. So just some residual income there. And then I have something kind of big-ish up my sleeve. I haven't 100% decided if I'm going to do it or not, but it's leaning that direction. And then my husband recently took a job as a Bible teacher, full-time position at a local school, a high school Bible teacher. So he's really, really excited about that. He's not excited about having 5 vacation days a year and having a boss that he has to ask permission, for every little thing. So that's going to be a big life adjustment for sure. But anyway, that's just a little peek behind the personal curtain of our life. People ask me sometimes, if I regret it and if I do it again. And that's a really tricky question because I also believe that God is sovereign and everything happens for a reason, that when we are faithful to listen and obey, that's the best that you can do. I think if I could rewind time, maybe there's some things that I would do differently about the process. Maybe I think I would have navigated some of the conversations at the beginning a little bit differently maybe. But again, I can't be one of those people that lives in regret. I think that I was told something that didn't end up being true. And I think that that was the hardest part of all, being a person that just cared so deeply for my team, for the culture that we had there, for just my vendors, like so many different things. I don't know that there's any way, though, to prepare yourself for what it feels like letting go of your baby. And that would have been hard no matter who we sold to. And it would have been hard no matter who we sold to. But I think going from, privately owned, family owned to corporate was the hardest, most unexpected, deeply painful part of the process, for sure. But listen, I wish them well. I wish the business well. I want them to be successful. I truly, truly do. But for me personally, I'm on to a new season, right? A totally new season. And I'm excited to kind of be a resource to so many of you that are in the trenches, that are still the ones that are physically building your businesses. And I want to do everything that I can in my power to support you, to encourage you, to be a resource for you. I didn't do things perfectly, but I am proud of what it is that I created over the course of just a lifetime of being in this industry. And I don't plan to go anywhere anytime soon. However, when you see that one of these days when my kids get engaged and start having kids, I think that's when the big shift, and you may be like, wait a second, where did Tirzah go? She is grandma. That's what's happening. But until that time comes, I'm here. You got me. And I want to help as many of you as humanly possible. So there's my story. I'm sure I missed something big in there that I'll think of in the middle of the night tonight. But so what's up next? So next season, so that'll start in 2 weeks. I mentioned that we have Our venue owner series is coming back, so I do have a few more spots left for that. So if you want to send us a message, doing that through social media is probably the best thing to do. Just send us a quick DM and let us know you're interested, and we'll get you an application. I don't accept everyone. There are a couple little parameters. I just like to make sure we're on a, I vet a little bit. Not everyone that applies to be on the show is accepted, but I would love to see your application and see what you could potentially bring to the listeners. So, all right, my friends, that is all I have for you today. And I hope that helps you get to know me just a little bit better. And I look forward to this next season and encouraging you guys with the stories of so many incredible venue owners that I am privileged to be friends with. And I cannot wait to introduce them to you. So we will see you next time on the Venue Success Podcast.